Hello, I'm Tommy Moore from the Bartitsu Lab, and today we're going to be looking at the use of the lead hand. Now, in all martial arts, in all boxing, in all self-defense, being able to strategically and scientifically use your lead hand is hugely important. Now, for many people today, it's just a throwaway jab. It's a jab to set up a cross, it's a jab to set up a hook, it's a jab to keep range and keep distance. Historically, and in the work in the Bartitsu Lab, we treat it as a priority blow, something that can cause damage, set up locks, set up throws, set up chokes, set up escapes, but also a powerful blow in its own right. So in this particular sequence, we're going to look at the types of jab we do in the Bartitsu Lab, how they work, the mechanics, when, where, and how you'd use them. So without further ado, first thing we're going to look at is the pugilistic jab. And by the pugilistic jab, or the lead off, we're essentially going to be replicating how boxing was done in the bare knuckle era and in the early gloved era, which is where technically our Bartitsu originates from. So with our pugilistic jab, technically we are throwing majority of sources, some disagree, majority of sources with a vertical fist, like so. So with a vertical fist, the theory is that it's safer on the hand, that it's more aligned to, say, fencing technique. So it's got that fencing, pugilism crossover, it can fit into small spaces, and having a hand that's not pronated means that I can move into a grapple a little bit easier. I'm already in some degree of underhook position. So there are lots of different reasons and rationales and lots of videos that talk about it, so I won't bother too much with it, but we're going to talk about how the pugilistic lead off is done. Okay, pugilistic lead off, vertical fist. I sometimes turn it on an angle a little bit like this, so supinate it and turn it kind of on a 45 degree. Often this is done with a lunge, so if I'm hitting with my left hand, my left knee bends forward, my right leg remains back and relatively straight. I lunge and extend this. I'll do this from my kind of default Bartitsu guard. I'll do every technique with the lead off series from that guard, albeit some prefer having too high, some prefer having too low, some prefer high and low, some prefer extended. Every pugilist, every boxer will have their own preferences as to where they have their hands. For these videos, I'll have them in a kind of basic pugilistic countenance here. And again, pugilistic lead off, vertical fist, sometimes on a 45, often with a lunge, often with a drop step. So I step forward, just before my foot hits the ground, my hand impacts. So if you imagine all of my weight hits this just before my foot hits the ground. And the better you get at it, the more you can time it so the foot and the fist land nearly on the button. But you always want to make sure that hand hits fractionally before the foot hits the ground, so you get the best transference of mass and power. So in the pugilistic lead off, we're here, we do our drop step, and we lead our hand this way. So from here, like so. Obviously, I'm looking at you. If I'm looking at the opponent, which I would be in real life, here, here, here. Okay, so we're going to do that against the back right now. Again, the drop step is pivotal in this. So from here, some vital things to remember in the pugilistic lead off, often we're barring the mark. So our rear hand is often covering our solar plexus and our liver, like so. Our weight's transferred. Typically, as well, we don't tend to have, in the pugilistic lead off, the snap or the whip of the jab. You know, it is something which lands with some gravitas behind it, and then we'll follow it with a cross counter or a cross buttock, which is a type of throw. You know, it opens up the door, but it's typically not such a throwaway technique as a modern Western boxing jab. Pugilistic lead off is designed to cause injury, pain, it's designed to hurt. The drop step is almost like a penetration step in wrestling as well. It puts people off balance, it knocks people back, which is really important. So it's a power blow. It's an important, powerful blow. And if you look at most of the old manuals, the lead off by far has the most coverage. People talk about it as the scientific blow. It's the blow that takes up, in any one manual, at least 30 to 40%. So it's really important. So I'll do a couple more iterations of that. From here. Like so. It's designed to cause pain and injury and damage. It's really useful. Then in the Bartitsu Lab, we also look at the modern Western boxing jab. There are a couple of different variants of this. So some people prefer to throw it as a flicking sensation. So if you watch Tyson Fury, he almost treats his arm like a hose pipe. It fills up with water, it flicks and it snaps. Like so. People that tend to keep their guard relatively low have that kind of snap up approach. Just at the end, the body weight tilts into it. So up, 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 tilt. Up, 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 tilt. So kind of a snapping up jab. You get those, and you also get a more orthodox jab. Now, I was taught to throw more shoulder in this. I've seen a lot of coaches keep the shoulder relatively back and just have a snap out blow. I prefer a bit more shoulder, so I turn my shoulder into it and I turn my lead foot a little. So it's a little bit unorthodox for a Western boxing jab, but I prefer turning the shoulder, turning the hip and turning the foot on the lead hand. It gives me a bit of extra range, allows me to crash through, and in modern boxing, typically we're punching with a horizontal fist, like so. Now, this does feel nowadays a lot more natural to punch this way. You can still do it very effectively, bare-fisted. A lot of the people that did box bare knuckle always advocated vertical, but it's completely up to you. There are things to play with. But I'd say the two types of Western jab we look at, kind of a flicking or whipping jab, and that typically comes from low up high, and it extends, so like a hose being filled with water, extend, 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 snap, and you might whip two of these, 1, 2, or a kind of a mid-level power jab where we turn here, and again, trying to keep our elbow nice and tight, bang, bang. Our elbow keeps here, so we're not getting hit, 1, 2, and again, if we're looking westernized, we have our hand up here. In Bartitsu, we kind of carry it around here, but it doesn't really matter. So in the normal Western boxing jab now, we're going from here, shoulder in, like so. So again, I've got more twist on it than is typical for a Western boxing jab, but the principles are still the same. Now for the whipping one, comes up from down low, up, and this has a bit more of a lunge to it when I do it. Okay, and then we're going to look at the cat's paw jab. Cat's paw jab is quite interesting. So the cat's paw jab typically comes from a higher guard, and essentially what we're doing is we're throwing the fist down. You see like those Chinese cats that do this? When a cat hits something, it doesn't chamber, it goes over like this. Cat's paw jab. So in the cat's paw jab, typically we have a higher guard. It might be in a sense of milling, so we may be moving. As the hand is on the high, drop this down. I'm still hitting with the major knuckles, but it's more of a dropping motion than a thrusting motion. You can catch a lot of people out with this, so it's a relatively unorthodox punch. You see it in Champ Thomas's manual, but other boxers, even older boxers, have been known to do these kind of dropping level jabs. They're quite good at keeping people at range. So if you look at James Donor Quinn, who's a famous modern gypsy bare knuckle boxer, he has something called the fishing rod, the fishing pole, and he holds his jab out like so. He holds a long extended hand. From that, it's quite easy and simple to do this cat's paw jab, this kind of knocking jab. Holds people back, but it can also be quite a surprising blow. You can drop your weight with it a little bit as well, so when it lands, bend your knees. So from here, hand comes a little bit high, drops down. So dropping cat's paw style jab. Unorthodox, can be effective, quite good to compound with other techniques. You know, we're doing boxing for self-defense, so we can do this cat's paw jab, followed by a hammer fist. Cat's paw jab, followed by an uppercut. Cat's paw jab, followed by an elbow. It's actually quite useful. So you're with your opponent, hand raises just a little, it drops, and your body weight drops down it. So you're knocking at a door kind of aggressively, kind of a throwing action as well as a kind of cat's paw motion. Quite effective, quite useful. I quite like it as a setup technique to cause pain. Some people also aim to hit with the foreknuckles here, because you can really rake down a person. So as you drop it, if I don't hit you with the big knuckles, I can at least get a decent kind of cutting, slicing rake with these inner knuckles here. Okay. Excuse me, these boxing gloves are not meant to be come on fast and quickly. Okay, then we're going to look at the Slavic jab. Now the Slavic jab, you see a lot of this in Sambo, in Sistema, in a lot of the more unorthodox areas of Russian and Eastern European pugilism. And essentially the difference with the Slavic jab is the thumb's down, like so. So the thumb goes down. There are a couple of benefits for this. The thumb goes down, and that raises the shoulder up, which protects the jaw. So, boom, like so. I've got a relatively safe part of my face. So with the Slavic jab, I've got good coverage against the opponent's right hand. I've got good penetration of that jab. Because it's vertical, albeit the other way around, it can slip through guards nice and easy. So again, the Slavic jab, great for slipping through guards. Also, the pugilism jab, great for slipping through guards. And you see a lot of Cuban boxers still do that vertical fist jab, even though they're doing modern boxing. Really useful. So in the Slavic jab, here, I like to do this with a bit of a lunge as well. Boom, so I can drop this in. But you can do it statically and also defensively. So the Slavic jab's really good if I'm fading back. So I might want to fade back, fade forward, fade back, go forward, fade back, go forward. So again, Slavic jab, great for penetrating guards, great for retreating, covering a retreat, and also keeping your face safe. So I'll do a couple of examples of that. Here. So I quite like the Slavic jab. Next, we're going to look at the contracted jab. A lot of us do jabs or leads off from extended range. From here, boom, boom. Often we might be called on to do a jab when we're closer than we'd like to be and use that jab to make distance. So the contracted jab, I typically do this in a vertical fist format, is when I'm too close to the opponent, I drive it in. Now for me, for the contracted jab, it's about turning your wrist, so from here to here, there to there, and driving it upwards. Because we're close, I can't get the power to push in, but if I turn my wrist, I can push up. So again, we're closer than we'd like, we turn our wrist and we strike upwards. So here, I'm closer than you'd naturally think for a jab, but I want to get back to striking range. So turn my wrist and strike up. And again, a lot of this is how you use your mass and your weight. My body's too close, but I can still bend my legs and drive forward. So it's about bending, driving forward, making space for me to fill that space. So we're too close, I do that extending, contracted here, so I'm contracted, I do my jab up close, but I extend it really far so I can fire that shot. So again, it's an example of where you can use jabs in an unorthodox way at an orthodox range. Okay. Next one of my favourites, I call the gunslinger jab. So this is a jab which comes from a place of complete rest. In jiu-jitsu or Asian martial arts, we call this shizentai, normal relaxed posture. So from here, from a normal relaxed posture, I typically do this in the way of Colonel Monstering. So hands are relaxed. When I need to throw that jab, I turn sharply my shoulder, I bring it up to the center of my chest and out, like so. And I turn my right shoulder behind my left. So I end up with a thin profile, like so. So I quite like Monstery's lead off, Monstery being an author of self-defense manuals at the time. Monstery's lead off from a position here, but I call this the gunslinger jab because it's almost like a Wild West fighter. It's good to get good at this because this is a good surprise jab. I didn't know we were in a fight. This guy comes over here, I turn and I fire it. So the important thing, vertical fist, as the front shoulder comes forward, the rear shoulder shoots back like an archer pulling his bow. Completely online, very sharp, very powerful, but again from a relaxed position. So Monsteries or the gunslinger jab from here, you can generate good power, good torque, and it's quite a good one to do as you pivot or if you're surprised. So those are some of the main jabs or lead hand blows. If we're causing damage, disruption, pain, then we typically go with a lead off from pugilism. A drop step, full penetration, full weight behind it. So drop step, lead, pugilistic lead off. When we're a little bit closer and it starts to get more of a tussle, we typically use an orthodox boxing jab. Typically I throw shoulder, hip and foot. If I'm fading backwards, often I'll do a Slavic jab. To keep myself safe, penetrate through the guard, but again, I can easily slip back off that. If I'm too close and I want to make range, I do a contracted jab. So turn the wrist, push out and fill the gap. And then finally, if I'm surprised or it's coming at a strange angle, the monster or the gunslinger. Those are some of the key jabs. And then you can move into compound jabbing. So any of you that's done boxing before, you'll know how to turn a jab into jab cross, into jab uppercut, jab 1, 2, 3, jab cross hook. So we're going to look at some slightly more different or oblique things. So two I want to look at from Bartitsu are the pugilistic jab into the hammer fist. Obviously the hammer fist is in French boxing, known as mato, the hammer, and also in Japanese jiu-jitsu or temiwaza as the tetsui. So from the lead off, in the pugilistic sense, we roll at the elbow. We don't want to bring it all the way back in, just roll kind of partially in, turn into a hammer. 1, 2, 1, 2. So we've got a good compound blow. So from here, I quite like this technique to set up something powerful with the right hand, or a sweep, or a throw, or a lock. Okay, then we've got the jab into the chopper. So a bit like we rolled into the mato or the tetsui, we can do the lead off into the chopper from early bare knuckle boxing. So we hit here, we roll, and now we're using the two big knuckles but on the back, like so. So tetsui or mato, chopper. Okay, and again we hit, we do a small roll, and I drop my body weight with this. Some people advocate a fast arm-based action. I prefer to hit, drop my body weight with it. So from here, so again, the lead off, the pugilistic lead off into the chopper, really, really useful. Then you've got a very easy contraction into elbow strikes, and there's two which I like from the pugilistic lead off. So pugilistic lead off and the empiwaza that comes upwards. So we take the empiwaza from a temiwaza in jiu-jitsu, but you also see it in French self-defense systems like defense dans la rue. Lead off, and we spike